That takes us to our discussion topics. Our first one is going to be how David Braben has changed the face of gaming. So we talked about the video from Kim earlier. That is, like I said, something that everybody needs to see. But the fact of the matter is, let me sum it up. In 1984, David Braben and Ian Bell broke the entire paradigm of gaming by creating an open world sandbox when everyone else was focused on 3 lives, get an extra live at 10,000 points, 10-minute long game experience, and absolutely, if you do everything perfect, you'll beat the game in whatever, less than an hour tops. They were like, hey, how about we don't have a way to win the game? You just go until you're done. You're bored with it. You can go for weeks. You can go for months. How about we don't have 3 lives? You have 1 life. You live until you die, and then you're done. How about you don't have a score and an extra whatever? You just have money as your score, and you earn until, you know, because you want to spend your score to buy stuff. Change the whole sort of back in 1984. Right now, everything that I'm telling you there just sounds like, yeah, duh, no brainer. That's, you make a good game. You don't want to do something stupid. Everything that I'm telling you, they took it to publishers who said, you can't do that. That's not a game. Video games, you have to have, you know, you put in a quarter and then you play for 10 minutes and you run out your lives and then put in another quarter. Like, that's how games work. This was entirely a whole different thing. Changed the face of gaming. Now, I definitely understand that lately there's been a decent amount of sort of criticism. I've heard from, you know, oh, David Braben this and David Braben that. He's rich. He's sold out. He doesn't care about Elite anymore. He's focused on other stuff. He's this, he's that. I disagree. And let me point out something. It's not just that this guy did something amazing back in 1984, and that's why you should follow him for forever. Let's talk about Elite Dangerous as a game. All right. Now, sure, Elite Dangerous is, I think, a game with the greatest potential ever. And yes, you can point all day long to nitpicks of, I don't like this, I don't like that. I wish this was better. I wish that was better. We all can. Yeah. But Elite Dangerous is the first game that I can say in my entire life that I have played that is an open world, or in this case, Galaxy MMO, that features billions of maps or zones, such that a new player starting right now in Elite legitimately can find a zone, can find a thing that nobody has ever found before 8 years into the game. Now, admittedly, there are some aspects of this that can seem shallow unless content is regularly placed in these zones. Yes, I think that Frontier can do a better job of putting in more sort of what proc gen and hand stuff and whatever in different places. I think that if you look back to 2016, 2017, there was a golden age of Elite where people were legitimately finding Thargoid structures and Guardian structures and oh, there's a weird thing here that's part of a weird storyline, whatever. And yes, that requires constant sort of work to keep populating the galaxy with shit to find. But going back to my original premise here of what I said on this point, if you play World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14 or Fallout or name your MMO here, Black Desert Online, if you play any of these games, you can absolutely be the first person to see a zone. You could be the first person to see a tree, to see a thing, right? If you play in the alpha or the beta or whatever it is that they have, and you're the first one. But by the time it gets released, much less 8 years later, there's not a single tree, a single rock, a single monster, a single anything you're going to see that you're the first person to see. Elite has that. Now, yes, definitely things to pick and say, this should change, that should change. But in 2 points, what they did in 1984 to change the whole sort of gaming structure and put it on its head, and the fact that this is the first game that I can think of, and please in the chat, mention if there's any that you can think of where you can go to a zone 8 years later that no one has seen. This is a situation where it's like, yeah, for all their flaws, and everybody has flaws and everybody fails sometimes. If I have to back somebody and say, I put my money on that guy, David Braben's my guy. Ride or die. Tweaked, hop in.
my recent frustrations aside, I don't have almost 4,000 hours in this game for no reason. I mean, Elite Dangerous, and I've said it on this show before, is the most unique and intricately complicated game with all of its systems working together in existence, to my knowledge. I've never played it. I've been playing video games since the days of Space Invaders and Pac-Man, and I have never found a game even that comes close to what Elite Dangerous is doing right now. Odyssey aside, what it's doing right now in the live game. The freedom to go anywhere in 4 billion stars in the actual galaxy. The flight models of the ships, the way you can, the engineering is basically customizing. You can endlessly customize the ships, and every little change you make doing your engineering changes the way the ship feels when you fly it. Every little detail of this game just makes it so amazing that it's almost an addiction for me. I can't go a couple days without flying my ships, finding something to do.
Hell yeah.
There's nothing else like it, and there never has been. And when Elite came out in 1984, I mean, come on, guys, that was Donkey Kong. That was, we were playing side scrollers. We hadn't even gotten into any real MMOs. I mean, I think around that time, the closest thing I could think of would have been, what was it, Sid Meier's Pirates, where you were going around in the ocean doing piratey type things. That was kind of cool, but it still wasn't to the level of what Elite was even then.
That was after Sid Meier's too. That was after Elite too, because Elite, you're talking about 1984. Sid Meier's was on the fucking Amiga 500 and all later. Yeah. That's what I mean. I mean, just what he did in 84 was mind blowing. I don't think people give him enough credit for that. And to that point, I don't think Frontier gets enough credit for what they've created with Elite Dangerous. I mean, it's just point another game. You go to No Man's Sky, it doesn't scratch the same itch. It's not as detailed. I obviously have not been able to go to Star Citizen, but I've read a lot about it. It's not as open. It's not as expansive. It's not as detailed. Elite Dangerous is unique, and it's not matched. And I don't know of anybody that's matching it anytime soon. Wolf, hop in on this.
Honestly, everything that Tweak said, I completely agree with and echo. Like, I don't always find myself completely agreeing with him, but he's dead on.
I had fun thinking about this one. I think this is a really fun topic because, I mean, I had a Commodore 64 back in the early 80s, and I think I'm of a vintage that maybe is shared by a certain portion of our audience. One of the first things I did was to like what Tweaked was just saying. I went back and looked, like, what games in that exact year or within that time frame was I playing? And some of these might ring a bell for some of our audience. Games like Raid on Bungling Bay, Archon 2, One-on-One, Julius Erving and Larry Bird, Impossible Mission, Goonies, Epic Summer Games 2, Space Taxi, Flight Simulator 2. Flight Simulator 2 was still miles and miles away from Elite. Maybe the closest thing from the sense of at least you could fly something. It had 4 cities, which were just some blocks on the ground, and 80 airports, which were some lines on the ground. None of that procedural, all had to be hand done. And that was it. That was the game. There wasn't any more to it like there is in Elite. Elite 1984 included basically a precursor to what we now call BGS, with its procedurally generated political systems, system danger levels, dynamic trading markets. The game also came with a novel, which I don't remember any of these other games coming with. The Dark Wheel, for the creation of like world building and headcanon, which previously I'd only ever seen in movies. It was one of the first games where the game mechanics had reasons for their existence. I found a great quote it's actually from the Elite Fandom Wiki. Just a couple sentences here. It says, with no score, what was the purpose? The Thatcherite years of the 1980s provided the answer: money. But money isn't a score. You can spend money. On what? On upgrades. So your ship had to be inferior to start with. What would be the purpose of upgrading your ship? To defeat other vessels. Why would those other vessels attack you? Because you carried a cargo. So trading was required alongside piracy. So something that we take for granted today in this game and hundreds of others, Elite was the first game with multiple independent game loops. or interdependent game loops. It's been credited as being a major influence in every open world game that has come since across all genres. Even the former creative director of Grand Theft Auto referred to their game as basically Elite in a city. And the last one here, Elite holds the Guinness World Record for being the longest running space simulation in history.
Yeah, I mean, to the thing that Tweak said, I don't think there would be a Sid Meier's Pirates without Elite. I don't think there would be a Civilization. Their game developers were having ideas of stuff to do, but game publishers were saying, if you don't have a little Mario that's jumping up the ladder and you get an extra guy at 10,000 points and he's got to be able to land on, stomp on Donkey Kong's head and win, we don't want to do it. Like all of these other things that they were like, we're going to veer off to the left and right and whatever. It's easy to overlook the fact that none of that exists without Elite. Maltmeister, hop in on this, please.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything people are saying here. Elite was one of the first games that made me believe that gaming had a real future. I've always been into games. It was a kind of escapism for me. Some of you know my past, and it was hard. So games was one of the ways I kind of just got time to myself, got to think about, life and things. But Elite was the first game I really got hooked on. I'd played the racing games, or Frogger, where you go left, right. They weren't really challenging or anything, though. Elite, it brought a whole new world to you. It was completely different. I remember the first one. I didn't play it as much as Frontier, I will admit that, but I'm pretty sure it, like 3D graphics and stuff, it was almost unheard of back then, kind of virtual, you know what I mean? It was something that was just, I was in awe of then. I'm pretty sure you guys heard me earlier on when I talked about Braben and what a guy I thought he was in the gaming industry. It's the first time I've actually spoke about him in that way, but it's so true. He's an innovator. He's made a game that has changed the future and the past of gaming. You're so right, Kai. We wouldn't be where we are without this game, not at all. And because of Elite, I might not be where I am, honestly. It gave me an escape, many hours of escape.
Absolutely. And let's not lose sight of the fact that if it wasn't for Elite, you wouldn't have Privateer, you wouldn't have Wing Commander, you wouldn't have Star Citizen. I know it's so popular. I don't get it at all. I never will. I'll rail against it every chance I get. It's so popular for Elite players to shit on Star Citizen. It's so popular for Star Citizen players to shit on Elite. I don't get it, man. They're both awesome space games. They both have a ton of potential. They're both a long way from where they want to be in the end. Love them both, whatever. Yeah, but you're exactly right, Maltmeister, as far as just the I could hear the love in your voice for the stuff that David Braben gave us. And there are times where it's going to be awesome, and there are times where it's going to be frustrating because David Braben is human, and the game, the company, Frontier, they're human, and they have times where they do amazing stuff, and they have times where they screw up. But I'm along for the ride, and I hope you are as well.